this meeting of the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge we're in the traditional territories of the Snuneymuxw First Nation and other coastal nations. Introduction of late items, Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the only late item is future committee direction added by yourself.
That's correct. Thank you very much. Could I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended? Doug, seconded by Scott. All in favor? Motion passes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll ask for an adoption of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Eastmere, seconded by Scott. All in favor? Okay. Council communications, none today. Presentations, none today. Reports, none today. Other business, we're going to start with the Lost Lake traffic, road traffic. This was referred to the committee at from a finance and audit meeting for some suggestions and ideas. The delegation was supposed to come, but he is sick. So who's going to introduce this? Ms. Gurry? Was there, or Mr. Rose? Or do you just want me to? Mr. Sims, who wants to?
Who wants this hot potato, Chair? Thanks. So essentially, to the committee, the Lost Lake traffic calming was presented to Council, a committee of the whole, which is the Governance and Priorities Committee, and with the recommendation that it proceed based on the work that staff have done to extend the existing traffic calming with having checked in with the neighborhood and received, Mr. Rose will correct me, about 2/3, 60% or something in favor of the of doing further work. And then when the consent item went to Council for consideration, Council elected to refer it to the committee. So here we are. The report that went to the Governance and Priorities Committee should have been part of the agenda package, I believe. And it's, yeah. So it's up to...
I don't think anybody got the report. Nobody has the report. No, it wasn't sent out. I'm hearing from the committee, nobody's got a copy of the report. If we could maybe pull it up and put it on the screen, is that possible? Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that right now, Chair. And just to, okay, thank you. Colin changed his name. I just wanted to confirm that's who was online there. Thank you.
Just for history, fast history for people on the committee that may not know, Lost Lake Road doesn't have sidewalks. It's very long, it's very winding, it's very narrow. It's an older one. City staff have been working very diligently for the last, I would say 5 or 6 years at least that I'm aware of, to try and fix this in consultation with the neighborhood association. I do have some comments from the neighborhood association, but I think what we could do is, do we want to read the report out, or are you guys able to see it, or can we blow it up so people can read it? And we'll just give people a few minutes. I'm sorry that this didn't get sent out to the committee members.
It's on the agenda.
It was on the agenda that was sent out?
Oh, so did people read it then? Because they're all saying they didn't get it. Yeah. Otherwise, we may have to defer it, or, yeah, I don't think was it a hyperlink?
The agenda that was emailed out.
No, it's fixed as an appendix at the end of the agenda.
It's on page 10 is the first page.
Can you, okay.
That's my bad.
So you guys missed it then? Got it. Okay. We'll have to make sure that you guys know there's attachments in future.
I can't hear anybody. Is this, are you guys started?
No, I know. My mic's on. Yeah. Just so you know, Colin, we were just looking to see if people had a chance to look at the report on Lost Lake Road. Some had, some hadn't. So I'm just going to give a very fast overview of concerns that were raised and then staff can reply if people are good with that. So one of the big issues that came up is there was a request for black bollards at the Smoky Crescent intersection. And I'll let staff talk to that one when we get to that. The other one was another suggestion that they were looking at is a 3-way stop sign at Tanya and Lost Lake. They would like no parking on the side of the shoulders, packed crushed limestone path. But in all honesty, there's no room. That's my take, but I'll let the staff do that. And then signs requesting parked cars to allow a meter for pedestrians. So I know Mr. Rose has worked extensively with the committee. He's gone out, walked the area, listened to the concerns. So maybe I will ask Mr. Rose to talk about some of the things he sees as issues, what the city can or cannot do. And I know also Doug has also went out and sent some suggestions forward, and I'll get him to speak after we hear from Mr. Rose.
Thank you very much, Chair. Exactly as noted, we've been looking at this corridor for, to be perfectly honest, probably over a decade because the walkability is very challenging. It is a pre-amalgamation road that was built to a very rural standard on a very challenging topography. And, you know, we've heard for many, many years that folks would really like to see some sort of sidewalk or walking shoulder. And more recently, that sort of came to a head with some significant speeding concerns, which we were able to validate. I believe the pre-traffic calming version 1.0 speeds were well into the 60s on some stretches. That's the majority speed. And so, as I say, sort of the version 1.0, we acknowledge that pedestrian facilities really were not a viable option, but we definitely had some tools in our toolkit to mitigate some of the speed along the corridor. And so there were a number of features installed, and those have definitely had a traffic calming effect. And so they have not improved pedestrian facilities. We are fully aware of that, but what they have done is slowed people down, so there's less, I guess, tension between vehicles and pedestrians. Earlier this year, we were asked by the neighborhood association to revisit this issue, despite having previously surveyed the community and been effectively directed to not move forward with anything else. And so I did walk the entire corridor with representatives from the neighborhood association and had several conversations about potentially adding some shoulders in various locations. And to be quite frank, it's not viable. It's cutting into rock, re-ditching, significantly altering private residence driveways, in some cases, I would say, to the point of making them not usable. Following that, we did install a number of signs to reiterate the new provincial laws to ensure minimum passing distances. We had some previous signage out there to warn drivers and pedestrians, drivers, and cyclists that it is a winding, narrow road, that they all needed to be aware of each other. And so, anyways, based on the request from the neighborhood association, we did reissue a public survey to the same footprint of houses that were previously surveyed, and did get a majority support at 61% to move forward with additional traffic calming. We also did hear more feedback that there's a desire for some sort of improved pedestrian facilities, but it's nothing's changed, so it's still not really an option. Within our traffic calming toolkit, we commonly talk about vertical or horizontal deflections. Horizontal being things like chicanes, traffic circles, center island medians, things of that nature, or vertical deflections, which are quite commonly speed humps. People may have referred to them as speed bumps in the past. Those are the very aggressive, I would say, parking lot style, whereas speed humps are the more elongated versions that we've been using and have standardized across the city. A few locations along this corridor, we did use raised crosswalks. Sort of in plan perspective, they are the same approach as a speed hump, but they have a table across the top that allows for pedestrian crossing. So they're a standard 3-meter width to match a typical crosswalk, but then having that same approach and departure. And so we did use those in the first traffic calming program to create some cross connections where possible. So coming back to the current report, we're proposing some more speed humps to further address some of the speeding issues. There was a discussion during the previous committee meeting regarding some the implementation of some bollards at the Smoky Crescent intersection to provide a bit more buffering for pedestrians. We have gone out and had a field assessment of that, and it is an option if we choose to go forward with that. I believe the council motion was to go forward with that. And so that is absolutely something we can include in the work. We have subsequently received some information about concerns with speed humps and the use of bollards. There's a finite number of things in our toolkits to affect these changes. And in this area, they are probably even more limited. One thing that is not in our toolkit for traffic calming is multi-way stops. If they are put in when they are not warranted, they actually can create some very dangerous situations because they generate poor compliance, which creates unexpected conditions where if you habituate drivers to going through a stop sign because there's no cross traffic, then the one or two times that they do come from that leg, there's a potential for a T-bone intersection, which is usually the most spectacular. And so really it's not something that we would recommend as a traffic calming tool. It's a right-of-way tool. So I hope that I've covered off most of the salient points here, but happy to answer any questions or discuss any.
And just to add to that, their neighborhood association did disband because the community felt that only two people were only representing their viewpoints. So I've worked with that community association for 8 years, and actually prior to that when I was policing. And it was taken over by a couple, and a lot of people did leave the committee, or community association. They had like 40 or 50 at a point, and they dropped down to about 5 or 6. So there is a lot of concern about that going on. So
Chair, I would also just note there is a delegation
no, he
here.
can't come.
Oh, okay.
He sent us an email to council.
Oh, okay.
That's why I read out his stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
so that was a mislaid
I'm
item.
sorry,
My
yeah.
apologies about that.
He's got concerns. They don't think speed bumps work, and they don't want to see any more. They don't like the bollards either because they just get removed and hit by cars. So, which is very true. As a person up there all the time, I see them down all the time. So, and I know I've talked to staff about them. They have to go back up and fix them. So, Doug, I know you had some concerns about this. If I can ask you to share your concerns.
I sent some photographs. I don't know if they're able to put them up.
Can legislative services put them up? There we go.
So these were taken about a year ago, but these are what I would call no-post barriers that I think are at Tanya Crescent. And the gist of my submission is that, as it's been said, it's a really unique road with lots of problems, and it does need traffic calming. But I take great issue with respect to putting obstructions in the middle of the road. There's another picture of the ones, I think, down by Lost Lake Road. And these are big planter pots, and this is a three-way intersection. And the road is particularly narrow here for pedestrians. And I don't live on Lost Lake Road, but I do bike it frequently during COVID especially, and I have walked it. And these no-post barriers and the bollards create really serious choke points. When you're on a bike, you're traveling with the traffic, so cars are coming from behind you. It's not like a pedestrian who walks facing traffic, and even though there's not much room to step aside there. And the other thing I'm going to say is that the danger to pedestrians and bicyclists is not from the normal courteous driver. It's from distracted drivers, impaired drivers, reckless drivers, and speeding drivers. And speed bumps will slow those people down like they'll slow everybody down. But reckless drivers and impaired drivers will just not always respond to those. They'll treat them like a challenge, or as I sent a paper in for you, and the police department will know and the fire department will know that at a certain level of impairment, drunks drive at what they're looking at. So they'll drive into the back of emergency vehicles, they'll drive into a hitchhiker, and so there's a danger And I think one car already went off the no post barriers
Yes.
a year or so ago. And you can say, well, what do we care about drunk drivers? Well, usually they kill their passengers or they kill the people in the other car. And over in Powell River, 2 ladies were ran over. You know, there wasn't sufficient space. And the other thing I'd say about, I understand the economics are that you can't do sidewalks for all of Lost Lake Road, but there are 2 pieces of Lost Lake Road that are particularly dangerous, and, you know, the city needs to do something there. This is one of them. The other one is where there's a hill. The other day I was driving it and I saw a lady pushing a baby carriage, and, you know, there wasn't a lot of visibility, and then this is all in daytime. You put this at night when there's oncoming headlights, and it's so much worse. And so this area here, I think, would be safer if you had an elevated crosswalk. There are problems with an elevated crosswalk because you want to make sure it's where there's good visibility. If you put an elevated crosswalk on a blind corner and people start walking across it, there's a problem. But a combination of speed humps and elevated crosswalk would be safer. And I understand that the emergency vehicles say they don't have a problem with it, but I don't know what the snowplow drivers do, you know, and what gets left because it's, but that's what I'll say about it.
Yeah, it depends which emergency vehicles you talk to, because the ambulance does have a big issue with it, as we've heard. Councillor Smear?
Sorry, just for clarification, what intersection are we looking at in this photo?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
What intersection are we looking at in this photo?
Blue Jay, yeah.
Blue Jay Trail,
Yeah.
that one.
That's Blue
That's
Jay.
towards the south end
Yeah.
of the Lost Lake, and the no post barriers are up, I think, by Tanya Crescent.
The earlier photo was of Smoky Crescent, I believe.
Smoky Crescent,
Yeah.
that would be, okay, that's where the no post barriers are. And you know, from my perspective, speed bump the hell out of Lost Lake Road because it's a very major secondary route. And generally speaking, I have concerns about traffic calming because you're dumping the traffic onto another road. But Lost Lake Road needs its protection.
Councillor Smear?
Thank you, Doug, for sharing that perspective and these photos. I think it is helpful. What I had heard, just speaking to the Lost Lake Neighborhood Association, they had attempted to recruit new members and weren't able to do so, so that's why they had folded. But they've spent a lot of time trying to work with the city on traffic calming, and it's been a long and frustrating exercise for some of their members. So I think that's also partially why they lost some folks. To the point about, I just wanted to ask for clarification on the remark that that you shared about not doing multi-way stops. I wasn't sure what that meant.
So I think the example here is Smoky Crescent. So it's a 3-legged T intersection. And so currently Smoky Crescent has a stop sign on it. And so Lost Lake Road just is a through movement. And the volume of traffic on Lost Lake Road, I don't know explicitly, but I'm going to guess that it's probably 3 times the traffic on Smoky Crescent, maybe more. And so what would...
The first photograph was Smoky Crescent. The one with the no
Yeah,
post
and I think actually it was actually the Tanya and Lost Lake Road intersection where the neighborhood association had identified the fact that there's a lot of new developments coming for Tanya Crescent.
And so I would say that when they come, we could look at that. But the overarching concern is that stop conditions and like stop signs are used as right-of-way control, not speed control. And so if you have a condition where you've placed a stop sign where it's unlikely there will be anybody else in conflict with that driver, the driver will become immune to it and just ignore it.
Okay, going back to the bollards around the Smoky Crescent intersection that council had discussed, I think that what I was hearing from neighborhood residents was that because we have those concrete medians in the middle of the road, drivers are swerving into the very narrow amount of pedestrian space in order to get around those. So there was a discussion about potentially relocating those concrete barriers in the middle, but then also adding some bollards along the side so that we kind of help carve out that pedestrian space and fix that habit of drivers swerving over into the shoulder. And I think the staff recommendation was only for 3 on each side, on the opposite side away from on the opposite side from where the Smoky Crescent entrance is.
So just looking at the email and the imagery on screen, I think we pointed to 4 on each approach. It could be 6, it could be 12. It's just a function of how far do we want to go. One cautionary note I would point out is if you separate the center median element from the bollards, they become disconnected and you will just have that diversion further upstream, and so vehicles will still migrate over onto the shoulder. So it's for the most effective impact, you'd need to keep them together.
Yeah, that does make sense to me and would actually have the effect of calming and slowing the traffic through that area. There's also a request for a crosswalk at that area because pedestrians are finding it safer on the opposite side of the road that would now be protected by the bollards. So is there a way to assist in the crossing from the opposite side of Lost Lake Road over to the Smoky Crescent sidewalk?
Through the chair, I again would point out that crosswalks are not intended to be traffic calming or speed mitigation services. They are to direct pedestrians to a preferred crossing location. I would also point out that in recent years' time, both driver and pedestrian performance and behavior at marked crosswalks has become quite concerning. And simply marking a crosswalk is really not something I would recommend. I think if we wanted to revisit the overall traffic calming plan and look at some sort of a speed mitigation feature there, through the previous version, we did introduce some raised crosswalks where there were none previously. If we wanted to relook at this and consider this for a raised crosswalk, that's something that we could probably consider, but I'd want to take it back and review it. But simply marking a crosswalk is something I would be very cautious about using.
So any questions from committee members or any other things? Doug?
I just wanted to say that the courteous drivers on that narrow road, if there's a pedestrian or bicyclist, they move over because there's not always a lot of oncoming traffic. But those things in the center of the road shut all that down. And, it's counterproductive and it makes things less safe, in my opinion.
And that comes from hearing many cases at the court, as I know. Yeah. I was remiss, I need to introduce Lisa Bolpal Singh, who is our deputy CAO, I guess, is that your proper term? She's back to the city after a brief absence, and we welcome her to the committee. I would also like to introduce Inspector Donovan Tate, who was here, I guess about, 6 years ago? And 4 years now he's back as our operations officer, and those we've met Superintendent Rochette before, so appreciate you guys coming. I'd like to hear from the police if you have any comments. I have mine from my years on traffic, but if you have concerns?
I know the road. I know the road, and it's. I acknowledge the challenges. Traffic is not my expertise. I acknowledge that the challenges with that big, heavy cement obstruction. I do think it probably does slow the traffic down, but it's, I wouldn't have much more to add.
Thank you. I'll throw in my 2 cents now, having spent time in doing accident investigations. I've been to many accidents where people do hit, as Mr. Cowling has said, those center abutments, or they'll go over and hit pedestrians because they don't want to damage their cars. So those are concerning. I know that one of the strategies the city uses is narrowing roads, and this is a very narrow road, and it doesn't stop speeding, which people know my viewpoint on that. You may stop the average driver from that, but you're not stopping, as Judge Cowling said, you're not stopping the average alcoholic or irresponsible driver. They just go around it. They find mechanisms. So I think this is a very challenging area, especially for the pedestrians. And I think staff has worked very hard to try and find solutions. I'm not a fan of speed bumps. Speed humps, yes. I think speed humps are more effective than the bumps. And also we need to take into effect what we heard from our accessibility committee. The speed bumps are very hard on their backs, and anybody that's got spinal injuries, because of the way they're designed, they're very difficult for them to go over in buses or vehicles. Speed humps are better for them, so those are things that were discussed at the accessibility committee. And I know our staff looks at those different 2 options when they're looking at the roads, road conditions, whatever. For enforcement, it's very hard to do in that area because there's no place for police cars to pull over and do proper enforcement. Plus, for the simple fact they're just overworked right now, doing serious stuff. And so those are concerns, because I know people are asking for more for police enforcement. Very hard when you can't pull over someplace to effectively work radar or pull somebody over safely. I'm not a fan of the bollards, which I stated at the thing. I don't think they work. I see them hit over all the time, and I think they make them more dangerous, and they also give people a false sense of security, which shouldn't be there. And also, we have to remember the Motor Vehicle Act is pretty explicit where they want pedestrians walking, and it is law to walk facing traffic unless there's a sidewalk. So we don't want to put them on the other side unless we can do that. Kim?
Excuse my ignorance, but I heard you say that it was too
You have
costly
to
to
wait.
put in
You've spoken
sidewalks
once.
and
Let the
such
committee members speak.
because of the excavation that would have to be done and pulling up people's driveways and such. And in my mind, I'm thinking there's a ditch on each side or one side of the road?
So just to be clear, cost is an element of it.
Yeah.
But in some instances, it's quite likely that adding some sort of a sidewalk would actually sever somebody's driveway and eliminate access to their property.
So I'm just thinking in my mind, I go out on the trails and such all the time, and at Cottle Lake, there's a raised metal walkway that goes over wetlands and so on, and it's flat and accessible for a lot of people. Is there not able to put something like that in the ditch and make it so that it's accessible, that they could weed whack under the ditch, like the city goes and does maintenance on it or something? I don't know. Is that a ridiculous suggestion?
Mr. Rose?
It would be quite interesting to see how that would be linked between driveways, because there's,
Yeah,
so you'd have a
somebody's
boardwalk
driveway.
and then a driveway and a boardwalk and a driveway and a
Yeah, yeah,
boardwalk.
yeah.
And so from a structural perspective, I'm kind of having trouble seeing how we would found it on the ground. And I would also be, we're having conversations about concerns with drivers striking things in the road right of way. And structures like that really aren't intended or capable of withstanding vehicles bumping them, running.
Go off the road and hit them?
Well, to be honest, like if you look around town, you'll see places where there's rub marks on curbs where vehicles have misjudged the corner. And because of the robustness of concrete curb gutter sidewalk, you get a black mark and that's about it. Whereas a steel or aluminum structure would likely be severely damaged, and it would probably cause a great deal of damage to a vehicle, and potentially, harm people who are nearby. And so I think that that's something that we would really want to.
Potential for harm is there anyway, right now, the way that it is. So I don't know, I was just imagining.
That's something that we can always look at and report back, possibly.
I would be very reluctant to consider putting a structure adjacent a road.
Okay, thank you. Any other first-time speakers? Okay, going to Councillor Eastmere.
A comment from one of the neighborhood residents was that they had discussed with staff the possibility of no parking on shoulder signs on the north portion of the road that has a paved shoulder. Through the chair, could staff speak to that potential?
I'm sorry, on the north side, so on the uphills, no, sorry, on the downhill side?
Yeah, I'm sorry. All I have is that they said the possibility of no parking on shoulder signs on the north portion of the road that has a paved shoulder.
Okay.
That's all the detail.
I'd be going down the hill.
So there were definitely conversations about prohibiting parking on the road. And so the request that I received was to effectively put no parking signs in, but not enforce them. Because my concern with putting no parking is, no parking or no stopping, is that we're doing that for the purpose of keeping vehicles away from it. And another conversation that we've had in a different lens in this neighborhood is people have to park on the street because they can't always get up their driveways for a variety of reasons, or there's a shortage of parking. And so the conversation I had went back to the community association with the question of, do you want to prohibit parking along this corridor? Because if you do, it's quite conclusive. And so if you don't, then we can work with what we've got here. And so we've installed the signage, reiterating the provincial legislation about clear passing distances. So I think it, to some degrees, goes to the conversation around how people approach storing their vehicles on the road, because there are some people who quite clearly try and move their vehicle as far away from the road as possible to allow for more users to make use of the corridor, where there are others who don't. And so removal of parking is certainly something that we can look at, and maybe in localized areas, but as a broad spectrum, I would be very cautious about pursuing that.
And similarly, there was a request for signs then to allow parking, but request that people allow 1 meter for pedestrians along the shoulder.
Yeah, this was all part of the same conversation, and this was all with the same cautionary tales of, I can take it away or I can leave it. I can't do portions of it. So.
Any other comments from the committee? Any recommendations, or just that it's been discussed and the comments have been heard and let staff do their job? So are we happy with that?
Sorry, one other thing.
Councillor Eastmere?
Sorry, one other comment that I heard from folks in the neighborhood was when we do the bollards at the Smoky Crescent intersection, can we do something that looks a little different than the white ones? Maybe a black version? Do they come in black? That was the question.
Dangerous as hell.
So through the chair, there is a catalog of different devices that can be used. Standard practice through transportation industry is that yellow is suitable for center line, where traffic is traveling in different directions. White is suitable for delineation of the edge of road, pedestrian facilities, or traffic traveling in the same direction. So we are doing our best to stick to that approach. So.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize, we also have to do a balance so we don't make it more dangerous for drivers as well. So, because, you know, I mean, that's another thing that has to be looked at. They have to balance too. And when you think about crosswalks, the majority of our pedestrian fatalities are at crosswalks. They're not any place other than crosswalks. So it's something that we have to be really cognizant of when we do put them in. As stated by Mr. Rose, like, they can't be used to try and slow down traffic because that's not their purpose. And when we put them in, we want to make sure we try and put them in so it is safe for pedestrians to cross, and in spots, especially not around blind corners where some people wanted them. So I do appreciate staff looking at this, and the committee looking at it. Is there any other comments I'm seeing? Where? Oh, sorry, Doug.
Just while Mr. Rose is here, at Burma Road, there's a very small roundabout. And I've noticed cars seem to be confused by it and just cut across. There's a little yellow circle around it, but it's more typical for roundabouts to have sort of a slightly raised pavement thing, so trucks can still make the turn, but the cars are more cognizant that they've got to go out and slow down. And so I think that would be a cheap fix, just to sort of fill that apron area in with, rounded rocks or bricks or something,
Mr. Rose?
much like some of the ones downtown. And that's all.
Yeah, that's a 100% fair statement. And so I think one of the things that how we approach traffic calming is through iterations. And so we implement things that can be installed relatively inexpensively to prove a concept. And we try not to overshoot because we don't want to have to extract things. And so the devices that have been installed so far are all generally modular. If we were to sort of come to agreement that is to become a permanent fixture, we could go back and revisit that and make it a permanent cast in concrete element. My cautionary note to that would be that is a significant cost, and I don't know the value that it would add. And so I think that the behavior you might be seeing where drivers are shortcutting through the backside of it is probably a bit of an indication of disrespectful drivers just taking the easiest path. And so it's an unfortunate affirmation that, driver behavior is something that's a real challenge for us.
Very true. Thank you. So are we all happy with that then, that we've seen and heard the report, made some comments, staff are going to take the suggestions. Most of them, they've explained why it can't be done, and then run with that. Okay, thank you. So moving on to B, Ruth Taylor.
Cheryl, sorry, I was, when I phoned in, the audio from the meeting had not been activated yet. I'm just wondering, I had a comment on the adoption of the agenda and the adoption of the minutes.
Go
If I could
ahead.
just say my piece. So I noted that the last meeting that was held was Wednesday, June 11th at 4 p.m. That is almost 6 months to the day since our last Public Safety Committee meeting. Our September meeting was canceled with no specific reason. There was no attempt to reschedule it. The October meeting was then canceled with no attempt to reschedule it. I'm now looking at an agenda that has 0 items for council communications, 0 items for presentations, 0 items for reports, and 3 items for other business. So we've been adjourned for 6 months.
So Colin, we're going to discuss this under, that was one thing I brought forward under new business. This will be discussed after we go through the next 2 topics. So I'll get you to deal with that then, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Anything on this topic? No? Okay. I'm going to ask Ruth Taylor to speak about one of her concerns that was raised, and it goes back to a previous meeting. Ms. Taylor?
Hi there. So, yeah, I'm looking at the footage of our last meeting, which was in June. And I just, in preparation of this meeting, watched our last meeting to see kind of what action items were outstanding. And one of the, well, there were 2, but one was the city staff engagement related to public safety and street disorder. That was around our discussion about the hub and downtown. And I think it was yourself who said, Councillor Eastmer, that there was concerns around engagement with the public and with community around this. And that's what I wanted to sort of talk about. So when Christy Wood, who's the manager of social planning, gave a rundown of kind of how the first 4 or 5 months of the hub was going, there were a bunch of mitigation ideas, and I'm curious sort of what kind of public engagement has occurred and where we are with all those mitigation plans. I think that that's something I want to carry forward from the last meeting. I think it's pretty clear to anyone driving through Nanaimo that that's a pretty serious public safety concern there on Nickel.
Ms. Wood?
Actually, through the chair, and excuse me, everybody, for catching up, was there a council motion on this?
No, it's a committee, it was a
Okay.
committee recommendation.
Right,
that
but
for
did it go
staff-
through to council?
Yep, it was already
Okay,
passed
thank
as a
you.
consent item.
Thanks.
Ms. Wood?
Thank you, through the chair. So I think that meeting was June 10th, I believe. So right after that meeting, we also came to council at the Finance and Audit Committee and presented the report at that time. And so the council direction that we received was actually to close the hub from that location and do relocation, but continuing to do the work that we're doing as well. And so just to answer, I think there were some specific questions that you, Ms. Taylor, had asked specifically around neighborhood engagement. And we continue, I think I reported at the last meeting about how we're engaging with neighborhood, and to date, we're continuing to engage with neighborhood, mainly focused on working with neighborhood associations in the South End generally, just as they're tasked with representing the respective neighborhoods. But we also meet with staff. We meet with residents in the area on a regular basis as well. And so I just prepared a little bit of a list just as a reminder of the work that we have been doing around neighborhood engagement. So we have met with CECA representatives since that date on a number of occasions to discuss the hub services. The most recent I did meet with the CECA chair was at the end of November. Several of these meetings also included people from Nob Hill as well. And then CECA representatives have been invited to attend the monthly building meeting that we have. And I know that there's been some challenges with scheduling and stuff. And so that's been available as well for engagement opportunities to connect with the services in the building as well. And some of those services are here today as well. And then some of the other things that we do in the South End as well, we attend the regular CAC meetings, the ones that are currently existing with
Could you
engagement.
just tell people what CA is?
Yeah, I was
please?
just going to define it. So it's our Community Advisory Committee. They're typically led by service operators or BC Housing around supportive housing sites. And so 702 Nickel is one of them. And the duration of the meeting will depend on the issues that are happening in the neighborhood as well. Another example is just our meetings with Chase River Neighborhood Association through the neighborhood integration process as supportive housing sites in the South End. And I want to note that I think many of the committee members here know that BC Housing is not doing CACs for new supportive. So the neighborhood integration plan was something that our council had advocated with BC Housing as far as keeping that neighborhood engagement going. So we've been involved in that process as staff as well, including around 1300 Island Highway as well. And then I think the few other examples since that time, we've received feedback, especially from some CECA members on hotspots for garbage and debris, and that was provided as input to the additional cleaning stuff that's happening in the South End. And then, of course, our CSO duty phone has also been shared with neighborhood residents and businesses, and they do try to be responsive anytime they need to engage with residents to respond to any immediate issues with capacity willing as well. And then some of the future engagements that we are talking about is almost doing, and actually the idea of the chair from CECA around doing a CAC style network for the entire South End. That would include city reps, housing providers, and so we're just waiting for direction from and guidance from CECA chair and the CECA reps to allow time for kind of a coordinated approach around there. And then finally, we've been discussing just transition planning for when the hub closes and looking at that in the early new year as well. So that's been some of but mainly, I have to say that mainly with the limited staff time that we have, we've been focusing on the council direction, which is to relocate the hub. So that's where our efforts have been.
Any follow-up, Ms. Taylor?
Can I? Sorry, I don't have a way of putting my hand up.
Yeah, we'll get to you right after Ruth, and then I'll go to you and then to Doug.
No, that's
Okay,
good.
Colin?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for listening to this, it sounds like there's been some activity happening here, and I guess it comes back to my point about the agenda. Like our the only thing other than what Ruth has brought up here is the Lost Lake Road traffic calming that was referred to the Public Safety Committee from the December 1st, 2025 regular council meeting. In the last 6 months, has there not been anything else that the mayor and council have requested the input of the Public Safety Committee? This is a group of 9 individuals who were selected out of almost 60 applicants 2 years ago and we are supposed to be the people that have
Okay,
experience.
Colin, I understand that, but we are going to discuss that after. We want to stick to this topic first, then we'll go back to that.
Okay, I feel like this is all intertwined with this whole.
No, but we're gonna go to that and we will explain all that. I just want to get through these two things and then we will go to committee direction and what's been going on. Please and thank you. Doug?
So did I understand you to say that the city is going to close the hub?
Yeah, through the chair, we have received direction from council to try to relocate the hub, so it will close in its current location.
March 31st.
Is the city leasing it then? Or is it?
Through the chair, we actually work with United Way as our community entity for Reaching Home, which are federal dollars to help support homelessness, and so they've contracted an operator that is leasing the space.
So do they have to give notice?
It's all done.
It's all done?
Yeah. Councillor Eastmere?
I just have a question about the shelter beds that are located at the hub location, because that they're run by BC Housing, right? So we don't have a guarantee that those shelter beds will cease existing at that location.
Right now, through the chair to Councillor Eastmere, we're focused on relocating the entire service, so daytime to nighttime. And so they do have a separate lease, and it's my understanding that they have funding until April 30th and that they're looking for a new location.
When do we expect to potentially have an update on, like, when could the Public Safety Committee get the next update on the situation with the hub? Can we just kind of make that a standing agenda item and have that on our
Ms.
meeting
Curry?
2 months from now?
So yeah, I was just looking at the minutes from the last meeting and there wasn't actually a motion on this update. So to get a regular update, you would have to have a motion that would, a recommendation to council to have that done. And then
I'll
have
ask for a motion after if that's what the committee wants. I see, are you finished, Hillary?
Yeah, I think just because it's kind of crunch time and it's an ever-changing situation there, then it could make sense.
Kim, I saw your hand.
Oh, yeah. I was just wanting to clarify, so the shelter bed part will stay open until the end of April, you said? And then the daytime space will close?
Yeah, through the chair, the plan has been just to move the entire service. So that's what the wishes of the operator and BC Housing's on board. We would have to have discussions about whether they would continue until April 30th if we don't find a location.
Okay, but the daytime portion would close for sure?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? Thank you very much, Ms. Wood, very informative. Going on to C, again, solutions for public congregation near the hub.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
one of the things that we talked about back in June was around the significant traffic safety concerns along Nickel, just with so many people that are intoxicated, all of their items, many of which are on wheels. You have a slope, you have a blind hill. It's kind of a perfect storm. That was one of my biggest concerns. And part of that was discussions around, well, this is happening because of the type of drugs that people are ingesting, fentanyl. It's been around a long time now. And the benzodiazepines. It's difficult to move people. Can't keep the sidewalks clear. And during that meeting, I suggested that the sidewalk is the issue. It's clear that it's not going to be possible to move people off that sidewalk. It's just not in our power, I guess. So at that point, I asked, well, what about the parking lots that are owned by the building owner? I think that day I'd counted 29 vehicles parked there. Prior to the hub opening, there were not as many vehicles in that parking lot, and could that be used as an overflow space just to keep people off of off of that busy highway. And I believe at that point, because it was a concrete idea, our chair, Councillor Armstrong, looked at staff and said, can we look at that? So the reason I'm asking is that this doesn't automatically come up as an agenda item. I had to ask about it, so I just want to know, A, was it looked at? What factors were considered, and where are we with
Ms.
that?
Wood?
Thank you, through the chair. We did look at that option with the building owner as well as the hub service provider. And there was some concern around using the parking lot for a variety of different reasons. One being that the parking lot doesn't provide direct access to the hub, just the way that the building is. And then, so I think maybe committee members will recall we were looking at possibly using a different entry to the hub. And unfortunately, there was a WorkSafe complaint about changing the entry. So there was considerable costs that would be required. And as we were investigating this, of course, then we got direction from council to relocate. So that really makes lots of challenges around when trying to do any, really significant changes that require capital funding for that as well. The other thing is we did look into even the possibility of like getting stairs from the parking lot down to the entryway. Again, it was going to cost some considerable capital commitments. And then the other thing is for using the parking lot as overflow, they would require additional staffing because right now, because there's no entry kind of clear access point to the hub, they would have to have an additional staffing body up there. And with the current operations and the plan to relocate, it wasn't looked at this time. So again, all of our efforts have been really focused on relocating it.
Any comments from committee members?
Can I say something?
Yep.
I just a question on the kinds of, you mentioned there would be a capital cost involved to an operator, and you mentioned that there'd be having to have more staff, and because we were going to relocate that, we wouldn't, that they didn't look at it. I mean, that seems to me like a them problem, not a public problem. It seems to me like what authority does the city have to enforce the bylaws?
I'm going to turn to Mr. LeBerge because we've had this conversation. Mr. LeBerge?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
So I think his question is we have bylaws in place around loitering, all that kind of stuff. Why are we not enforcing the bylaws? Like, I think I sent you some of the concerns. If you can just expand on why we don't enforce some of these bylaws that people expect could be.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, I would think the first thing we have to emphasize is that we have a homeless problem. Homelessness is not inherently illegal. At the same time, we have a co-occurring opioid emergency, and the reality is that these people are substance affected. We have these areas, we have concentrations. Can we enforce congregations of people that are substance affected out of an area? I suppose if the police and our enforcement services did a projected, calculated measure to accomplish those goals, then you're going to push vulnerable groups into spaces that enhances risks because they're using substances alone in isolated areas. So there's always a humanitarian factor in all of these considerations. Do we want congregations to block sidewalks outside of businesses and buildings? Of course we don't. I can tell you that our enforcement officers, particularly our CSOs, are in these locations multiple times every day. One of the other unfortunate realities is when somebody uses a substance, their mobility is extremely restricted, and even with encouragement, their ability to move even short distances is often very challenging. And it's not unusual when we respond to these congregation calls that officers will spend 1 to 2 hours moving 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and they, if they're successful, the spaces repopulate. So there's a lot of considerations. Do we try and enforce our bylaws? Do we try and encourage people not to congregate? Of course we do, but these are some of the practical realities. I think rather than saying, what could we do to enforce our bylaws more, we should be asking the question of where can we find suitable, preferably indoor spaces for these people so they're not congregating in these areas. Thank you.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, I guess what I want to make sure it's clear, with respect to the congregations and my comment about being a them problem, not a public problem, I'm talking about the people who own and operate the building and the people who operate inside the building. I'm not talking about the congregation. I'm talking about the people who have the issue with so many of their clients congregating and the things that they're not willing to do because of, say, capital costs or because they don't want to spend the money.
Well,
That's what I mean when I say it's a them problem, not a public problem.
Well, I can tell you one of the answers right off the bat is that they don't control where their clients go afterwards. It's like saying you don't want people to sit outside of London Drugs.
So interestingly, this is on the topic of attractants, right? Attractants and congregations to the 55 Victoria Road and really the block in general. We have a situation where there are professional practitioners operating inside that building who are actually actively competing with one another for business of the clients. There are professionals who literally, and these are reports from our members from the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association, come to us and tell us they see these professionals going into the SRO buildings and actively recruiting patients to come to their business so that they can prescribe them the drugs that they get from the pharmacy. And we have reports that doctors are in business with pharmacists, and there are organized crime rings operating with impunity still diverting drugs into the black market right from that block. So I mean, I guess my follow-up is okay, so if we are manifesting these congregations by these interests that are trying to recruit clients to these services. What can be done from a RCMP enforcement, from a bylaw enforcement, to actually deal with the problem upstream of them becoming congregations?
Okay, I'm going to turn to Inspector Tate, and then we'll go to Mr. LeBerge after Inspector Tate speaks.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Colin. So in terms of enforcing our way out of the problem, I would default to Mr. LeBerge's comments. This is the most marginalized in our community, and I don't know that enforcement would ultimately solve the problem or meet our objectives. Mr. Middleton's comments are well taken, and we understand that there's a problem. We have also received that information in terms of the doctors and the pharmacists and the hijinks that are going on down there contributing to the problem. We are consulting with other partners, provincial partners, other enforcement entities to look into that issue. I hear your concerns, sir. It's something that is high on my radar. I've spoken with you and Ms. Taylor offline on the efforts that we are making. It's a challenging problem, but certainly something that the RCMP is looking at my level, and we are taking some steps to address it.
Thank you, Inspector Tate. And I will just say, a lot of this stuff is hearsay and stuff, and in order for the RCMP or any other federal agency to take action, they must have concrete proof, people that are willing to give statements, all that type of stuff. So it's not as easy as Joe Blow told me. Like, it has to be all backed up. Search warrants have to be backed up. So there's lots of stuff. It's not a process that can happen overnight. And so that's around the criminal element that you're talking about. And I'm going to turn to Mr. LeBerge to go back to your bylaw question.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is just a reframing of the question from a previous meeting of why don't we designate 55 Victoria Road as a nuisance property. I spoke to it in the past. I can tell the committee that I'm developing a procedure document. This is in a draft, so it hasn't been reviewed by our leadership or CAO. But I can tell you that's governed in, with respect to legal opinions that we've received. And in principle, nuisance liability can extend to acts connected to a property, even if those acts occur off-site, provided that there's a sufficient causal relationship between the property and the disturbance experienced. Okay, so the application will consider two things: direct connection, where individuals leaving or entering the property cause disturbances. The property may be considered the source of the nuisance. But then there's the case of attenuated connection, where individuals congregate near a property that provide a lawful service, as in this case outside of a medical clinic. The property's role in causing the nuisance is less direct. In such cases, nuisance liability may not attach unless the property itself is operated in a manner that substantially contributes to or facilitates the disturbance. So in assessing those things, we'll consider a number of things. One is the geographic proximity, how close are the disturbances to the property. Temporal proximity, whether disturbance occurs immediately after individuals leave or enter the property or at a later time. We look for causal links, whether the property's use or operation directly contribute to the disturbance, and other intervening factors such as, is this public space? Are the gatherings related or unrelated to the service? These may diminish the role of the property in causing the nuisances. So when you compare a drug house where people come and go, loud fighting, disturbances in and out late at night, there's a sufficient connection to the property, and that may constitute a nuisance attributable to the property. In the case of a medical clinic, a disturbance by individuals congregating outside may not be attributed to the property if the clinic is providing lawful services and the disturbances rise independently of the operations. So it's not impossible that we can, but in fact, this decision is not made by me or my staff. These are things that we'll consider and whether there's a case warrant to be brought before council. But I can tell the committee that I'm very mindful, for the reason I described, that a proposal of this nature of having council consider designating lawful medical activities that provide important supports to, as what Inspector Tate said, a very vulnerable population, that puts council in a very difficult position. So these things are measured very, very carefully.
Thank you.
Ruth? Thank you. Sorry, I appreciate the comments from both of you. I think the operative phrase there is, if those medical services are lawful. And I think that's what I'm trying to better understand. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ruth, you had a comment?
I just want to say, as a mom who lives on Victoria Road, that there are very vulnerable people obviously accessing the hub, but the South End is a lot of vulnerable people living in the South End who happen to not be homeless. There's a large population of people living in poverty, working poor. I can't even imagine what the child poverty rate is in my neighborhood. The catchment school of Bayview, which is the feeder school for the Snuneymuxw Reserve, we have to be cognizant that these are spaces that the public spaces are spaces that some people in my community, they're the only spaces they have. You live in a basement apartment, you don't have access to a backyard, well, you're going to Nob Hill, or not. You're walking, that's another thing too, is like Nanaimo has been really good at trying to bring in a lot of green policies, getting people to walk. A lot of people in my neighborhood walk. A lot of people in my neighborhood take public transit, not by choice. And when you have sidewalks that are blocked, like thoroughfares like Nickel and Victoria Road, it impacts people's quality of life. It impacts their ability to walk. And it impacts children's ability to walk to school. I mean, these are not minor things. And in terms of pushing people to the margins where they're going to use a loan, the vast majority of people that are dying inside, in supportive housing, in hotels, in apartments. I don't believe that it's being borne out that the people that we see the most visibly are actually at the most risk of dying from fatal overdose. So I reject that. And I just reject losing our parks. I reject losing our sidewalks. And that's all I'll say about that. There has to be some middle ground between, well, we just can't enforce this bylaw. It's too difficult. These people are using these substances. And it's frustrating to drive to work because I don't walk to work anymore. I had a knife like by my face. I was like, okay, I'm done. So when you're driving to work and you see a parking lot that's there, that's mostly empty, and the entire sidewalk is full of people. I've seen actual mattresses, like foamies, with like 4 or 5 people just using drugs. And then you go to work, you do your work day, you drive home, and you see the same CSOs, and it's the same people, and it's 8 hours later, 9 hours later, and it's the same. And now you see a parking lot, because most people have left for work, and the parking lot's empty. And it's like, how is it that... And I know you've explained it, the social planners explained it, but that's very difficult to see. And I hope that the hub is moved, because we've all established that this location is very dangerous and it's not ideal. But I hope that the next location, which I'm going to guess is going to be near my family home, that it's better mitigated right from the start, because this is all predictable, that these substances will make you pass out, that, you know what I mean? Like, that there will be congregation. This is hopefully sort of right from the get-go, we can get ahead of this.
Thank you very much. Hillary?
I just had a question, because I think there was the motion that Councillor Hemmons led around better cleanups, and you talked about how that is happening, and part of that was a focus on the parks, like Deverell Square and Nob Hill Park. Can you just speak to what kind of increased presence and cleanups might be happening there?
Okay, through the chair, I might also hand over to Ms. Wood and Mr. Sims. So I do happen to know this because I was around when that motion was made. And in addition to the parks, there was an effort as well with the streets, recognizing the impact on sidewalks. And so we have heard some positive feedback from the Neighborhood Association and others. We hope, if anything changes, that communication will continue around the increased pickup of and cleanliness in the South End area. So through the chair, council directed extra resources to that effect, and that has taken place. And through the chair, if I might add, I had the opportunity to experience, I guess, the tent city crisis. I think I started the day it was being disbanded, 2018. And one of the things that we were challenged with at the city is that our attempts, even with our own bylaws and other enforcement, the courts were not terribly supportive of us. And I think Mr. LeBerge can speak to some of that. And there were times where we wanted to do things on behalf of our citizens and were, I'll gently say the word frustrated, because in this part of Canada, there are different levels of understanding around harm reduction and things like that. And I just want to acknowledge that's very, very difficult for the community, because they see us have bylaws, they see us have tools, but then wonder, well, why are we not able to do X, Y, Z? And the same with the RCMP. And I think the recidivism, that's a sort of long word, is another frustration for the RCMP. One of the things I'd like to mention through Councillors Eastmere and also Councillors Armstrong is Council has committed to the investment in the south end of a community centre. And as we look as upstream efforts to provide more resources to the south end, that's something that we hope the Neighbourhood Association will participate with us in. And I just would like to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this before we move on? Okay, seeing none, so this is something I want to talk about, and I know that we've heard concerns about, about the lack of meetings. One was, Councillor Eastmere was on a regular holiday, which we knew about. I was supposed to be here, but all of a sudden had an emergency doctor's appointment, which when a specialist calls, you got to take. And then also there was no agenda items. The problem that we've been having is we don't have agenda items. Now that can go back to council not referring stuff. That can go back to our terms of references. There's lots of things we're not hearing from community members. So one thing we need to discuss is how does this committee move forward so that you feel that you're being valued for your time. The survey was done. Not everybody did the surveys. Some felt that the committee wasn't worthwhile because we weren't accomplishing any. Others thought, yes, it's a way to start a process. So what I would like to discuss is how do we get to agenda items? You know, obviously we get the agenda items referrals from council, and we have to do a better job on educating council that maybe sometimes we should be referring stuff back here before we actually make a decision. And Councillor Eastmer and I have discussed that, and Councillor Thorpe is the reason he brought the Lost Lake back to us here first. So, or maybe there's a way that I can work with staff so that things are automatically referred back, such as, like we said here, the hub updates would be a great thing we're hearing from the community. Similar to what we do with the accessibility committee. Like automatically, plans are automatically sent there, which isn't happening. So I think there's work that myself and Councillor Eastmere can do with staff around that to see how can we change some of those things. If committee members have ideas, you are more than welcome to send them forward on topics. And that's how we got these last two was, Ms. Curry?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just about that, and I was thinking about this after hearing Mr. Middleton and hearing Ruth putting these on the agendas because they were discussed at the last meeting. I wasn't here, but I looked up the minutes while we've been sitting here. And a way to get items on the agenda is to make motions at this table. So make recommendations to council that then council can recommend you bringing forward the topics, because we take our direction from council, not the committee. So to get staff to report back to you, we would need you to first make a recommendation to council.
So one thing I did hear from people is they would like a recommendation that an update on the hub would be something that they would like to hear for now. Is that correct? Am I seeing nods across the room? So would somebody like to make that recommendation? Ruth's making the recommendation, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Do you think you have it captured, Ms. Curry? I know I can trust you to get what we're meaning. All those in favor of the hub as a regular? Thank you. I'm going to look to the RCMP to see if there's any ways that you think this committee could be used to help you in any of your targets or any of your community consultation stuff. If you can't think of something now and you want to send something later, that's great. Like, any thoughts, Superintendent? Or Inspector Tate, whoever?
Yeah, maybe we're just gonna have a conversation in regards to that, and maybe come back to the committee, and we're just gonna brainstorm, myself, Inspector Tate, and Inspector Gillespie as to.
Because I know
where we
this
can
committee could be
be
used
part of
for
this.
your community consultation, which is sometimes required as well. So we'll leave that with the RCMP. Yourself, Chief? Nothing that comes to mind right now? Okay, committee members, I'm going to go around the table and see what you think. I'll start with you, Colin, since you're on the phone.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, part of the issue too is that, you know, there are public safety related items that do get discussed at mayor and council meetings that don't get referred, and it seems to me like some of those things that don't get referred, it's because they don't want our opinion.
Okay, can you give me some examples, please?
Well, okay, sure, I'll give you an example. So recently I heard in the news that the SPO has been disbanded. And why was it disbanded? We were told 3 years ago or 2 years or whatever it was that started that it was going to be this great thing that was going to come in and it was going to totally transform how we tackle homelessness. And then we get this news report and the mayor is quoted saying we want better bang for our buck. And so like the taxpayers have spent like $2.5 million on this organization and we don't even know what they have to show for it. But even that decision wasn't ever kicked over to the Public Safety Committee. Another one was the whole issue with this fence that the city staff wanted to build a fence around city property to protect itself from the street disorder around the overdose prevention site. There was no recommendation prior to even voting on it.
Okay.
And then you want to go another one. Ian Thorpe's motion to try to shut down even ask Island Health to shut down the overdose prevention site. That didn't come to this table either. So like anything of consequence, of real substance, of the big issues that are facing Nanaimo, this committee that has been assembled and selected for people that really are both care about the issues and are very astute in our understanding of the nuances involved. They don't want to hear from us, and I take offense to it. I think shame on mayor and council in the city for wasting our time, And I want to see this committee actually function as a part of something that contributes something meaningful to the city. Here's an example. So in my email from September 12th to this council and a number of other people, I said, recently a property owner in Nanaimo wrote a letter to the Honorable Terry Young, Minister of State for Community Safety and Integrated Services. Wrote that letter on May 30th, 2025, about urgent concerns related to the social disorder around the hub. The response did not come back from the minister until September 9th. So we missed we missed at least one meeting in there, over 3 months later, and came instead from the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, Policing and Security Branch. The response, the province stated, if you have not done so already, you may also wish to present your concerns directly to the City of Nanaimo's Public Safety Committee, which is a forum established for citizens to present issues regarding the enhancement of safety and security in the community. This committee also advises on initiatives regarding public safety programs aimed at ensuring, maintaining, and enhancing safety in the city. If you go to the City of Nanaimo website, the mandate's listed right there, and it talks about all of the different issues that this committee grapples with. And also, shame on the province for letting this committee, the existence of this committee, stand as a shield from them doing their job. And frankly, like, my opinion is that if this committee can't actually grapple with some of the really serious issues of public safety in Nanaimo, there is no point. And all it is a shield for politicians, which is so disrespectful of my time and everybody else's time on this committee. I volunteer my time. I don't have the time to do this unless I prioritize it. That's why I get so pissed off when these meetings get canceled and not rescheduled, because it's important. And I would expect that everybody in this committee understands that too. So come on.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Scott?
I would like to see the committee functioning better, because I don't see it as functioning at all currently. So I would appreciate it if City Council could bring some more items for us, or we can put agenda. The way I understand this is that we can put items forward to council for them to bring to us.
Ms. Curry?
Yeah, some items that would be appropriate to have as agenda items is on your work plan that several meetings were spent doing. So that is what council has approved. That work plan went to council, it was approved. So items that are on that work plan would be items that could be brought forward for discussion.
At any meeting, we can just discuss our work plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you guys have ideas that are based on the, please forward them to myself, Legislative Surges, and Councillor Eastmere. I think there is a lot of frustration around the table. It's not just felt by you, it's felt by us too, because we would like to see us do more. And that partly falls on me for not referring stuff further, and we've talked about it before. Council sometimes forgets to refer. Prime example, we'd already made the decision on restorative justice, but we referred it afterwards, right? So I think there's ways we can work on it, and what we need to do though is we need input from yourselves as well as to, like, I don't want, and I've said this before, we can't solely focus on the homeless issue. That's one of many issues in the cities. Like, there's fire issues, there's other policing issues, there's public safety issues such as traffic, which we've talked about. But I do know right now, especially for people that live in the South End, there's absolutely no doubt the homeless issue is first and forefront because it affects their everyday life. And we're seeing that in the North End, but in the North End, it's on provincial property, so there's nothing the city can do, which makes it even more frustrating. So I think part of the other issue that we're looking at too is a lot of what we're discussing actually is provincial mandate. It's not municipal mandate. We've had to be thrown into it because the province haven't stepped up. So all of a sudden, the city's scrambling to find dollars, find staff, to find places to house our homeless because we're not getting the money or the time and efforts from the province. And that's where we have to continue our advocacy efforts on, let's step up. Prime example, as you just stated, 29 people sitting on a street because there's no place for them to go. There's no place for them to go because the shelters are full. And there's no daytime shelters other than the one. So, and there's more numbers that surpass that. Yeah, I'll get to you in a minute, but that's one of the issues we're looking at. But I'm gonna go back to Scott since he still has the floor.
Yeah, just clarity on how governance works for this committee would be helpful. So if we can be ask for agenda items. Those agenda items have to go on the agenda and then go to council, then come back to us or something. So
Ms. Gurry?
we're just going to need some sort of way to actually
I don't even
have some teeth and do something.
Yeah, so right now, as it works, any recommendations this committee makes, so on updates they want in the future that are outside of their work plan, would then be made to council, and council would agree to those or not. It
So
would be
that's
voted on a
outs-
council meeting.
So we're
But
bound
if
by the
they're,
work plan?
but,
I'm sorry.
yes, and exactly. And then so you decide on a work plan, you decide on, we went through like what was in the jurisdiction, what does this committee want to work on, decided on a work plan, and then anything outside of that would be a motion at this table that then we would get direction from council.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, through
Does
the,
that make it clearer?
yeah.
I know, it's frustrating
Clear
because,
is fine, but
because
yeah.
our other committee doesn't work that way, and that's where I get frustrated. Like, because ACI has automatically got stuff in it, and that's something we need to do is go to council and say, we want these items in regularly.
Through the
Ms.
chair.
Gurry?
If
I
I,
just believed, sorry, I do believe that Akai has a work plan as well that gets done annually as well, and that's
No, I
how-
know that, but they automatically have automatic referrals. Any plan that involves accessibility, any park stuff, all goes to them automatically. We don't have the same thing. Like a prime example could be, anytime there's going to be road changes or road safety stuff, it automatically comes to this committee to look at. Those are things I'm talking about, but that's on us for not making the recommendation to council. Sorry, Ms. Balpasing?
yeah, through the chair, Dr. Brody, you almost hit the nail on the head. Governance, I think, is very tricky, and I'm not sure how many people have been on a committee of council. And in my prior experience, it actually, it isn't intuitive if you're not regularly part of. And so, for example, I'd like to thank Ms. Wood because she actually provided a response which technically should have come at the direction of council. So thank you.
But it was at the direction of council. It was approved at the council meeting under consent agenda.
So,
Oh, okay.
so Chair, that's what I was stating. I looked at the minutes and there was lots of discussion, but there was no actual motion that went under consent at council. So there was no motions made. I wasn't here, or I would have recommended a motion to provide that feedback. That's what I was saying. So we
You
should
made
make
the
a motion
motion.
here today,
Didn't you, for the hub?
which you did. So there was a motion today to get updates on the hub to
Yeah.
the Public Safety Committee. So that will be on the consent items at the next council agenda, and then we'll report back to you.
So through the chair, if I might, one of the things we could work on, Ms. Gurry and I, is just some tips on the role of different committees, and it goes across the board, because there's times where things are operational and then things that are strategic. And the challenge I see for this committee is safety is such a broad topic that you're dealing with 1 minute things like pedestrian safety, to another minute like personal safety. And that makes it very complicated. But there are ways I think we can work to help the governance, as Dr. Brody pointed out. Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I agree with Colin. Like, I would like to see things coming to my desk a month in advance at least, so I can spend some time reading them, and then I can come to the meetings ready to discuss them, I think. And which did happen this time, right? Even though I didn't scroll.
Well,
in
yeah,
the agenda.
yeah,
My
that's something,
apologies for
yeah.
that, But yes.
Like, we've had lots of discussion at the council table too, as to how can we improve the experience of this committee, because you guys all took, not everybody, but most took the time to do the survey. And it was looked at very closely by council. There was different stuff, but I can't discuss a lot of it because it is in camera, because it's a committee that, but just know that our council is very concerned about moving forward to make it a better experience for everybody. And that's why I'm asking for feedback. Like, I think it's really important that if you guys are having concerns, we need to hear about them now, not at the end of the year. Is there ways that we can improve it? Obviously, Ms. Gurry, like Ms. Gurry said, falls partially on my shoulders. I should have been asking for recommendations sooner, which I didn't do till today. So those are things that we need to work on too, or certainly myself. So we can look at that. We can look to see if there's ways we can support the RCMP more in some of their like targets when they're looking at what is their community consultation process for, what are their priorities for the year, whether it be, there's always your normal traffic, safety, youth, blah, blah, blah. You know, so those are things that we can look at to improving to where we go. Hillary?
I appreciate hearing the comments from committee members about this. I think that a few of the suggestions of items that could have come here, like when it is a notice of motion and then a motion brought forward by an individual counselor, I don't think we have typically ever considered sending those things through to committee. It's something certainly to keep in mind. Like, for example, coming up December 15th, we have a motion from Councillor Armstrong, which follows a similar motion that we had previously, where we sent a letter to the province asking them to consider designating one of the hearth sites as a dry supportive housing site. My thought on like whether we should be discussing that at this committee, like, I kind of feel like I have a sense of where we would land on that recommendation, and so I'm just like, let's not waste any time and just send the letter from council on that. But maybe,
Colin, just wait, please. Councillor Eastmere speaking.
yeah, but maybe it does need to come back to this committee for a further discussion. But I think, like, further to that, I would just say, in order to have a safe and respectful conversation around this table, we need to have respectful dialogue. And I really understand that people are super frustrated, but I would say there's certainly been times around this table where it has not felt like a safe environment for people to express differences of opinion. And when we have some of the heightened language, it just creates an environment where I don't even want to be part of this discussion. And I've been part of some pretty tense conversations at the council table, and nothing has made me feel the way that some of the conversations around this table have felt. And I don't like feeling like that, because I really care about this community. I really want to dig into these subjects. I want to be able to have the tough conversations, but some of the dialogue has gotten to the point where I have felt like I've wanted to step back from this committee, and I really don't want to feel that way, and I want it to be a safe environment. So we just really need to be respectful with each other, and just remember that the way we say things, that carries a lot of weight, and I think for this committee to be taken seriously, we need to come professionally and level-headed and just ready to have a respectful dialogue. Thank you.
Kim, anything from you?
I appreciate you. You're my I appreciate you, Councillor Eastmere, bringing that up, because I felt that myself, that not comfortable, not safe, bringing up some certain things. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Doug?
I appreciate what Councillor Eastmere said. I would just say that I think the highest and best use of the committee is for a focused issue. I don't want to drag all this talent out here to have just a general venting about problems that, you know, we can't really do much about. And so I'm happy to be here for something like the Lost Lake traffic. The other issues, you know, yes, they're really important, but this committee is not this city, another city council. And so that's what we can do best is a focused issue. And that you councillors have to screen that for us.
Yeah, there is some concern from the council table too, that some of the things you'd like to be brought here are actually political decisions to be made, that really they need to be made by the political body. Like the cancellation of the SPO is a political decision. And it really didn't impact public safety the way we saw it to impact public safety. And we're not going to bring committees to do. I'm just going to be quite honest, not going to happen. That's a decision that this council needs to make. Do we want to continue with an SPO, tourism? We're not going to come to you on tourism. We're not going to do that. It's a council decision that needs to be made for us to cancel a program that we've supported or not supported. I think issues like we brought forward when Mr. LeBerge brought forward his report on, let's look at the extra CSOs, what can be, that was very useful information, and I think it's something that the community or the committee found useful. I think part of our problem is going to be and we all sit on different fences when it comes to the homeless issues and drug issues and blah, blah, blah. But as Councillor Eastmere said, we need to be far more polite. Like I have spoken to different people about, we can't be speaking this way to people. We need to be polite about it. We need to recognize, and I know Kim and I sit on different things sometimes on some of it, but from my perspective, we've always had respectful dialogue around, like, I believe in certain things, she doesn't, that's okay. because there's different methods to get where we're going, but we have to be able to discuss those, because you know what, someday we might all agree on something. And I think it's really important that we do look at that, right? You know, it's, and I know some people are coming here with lived experiences where they've had their kids threatened by the homeless population. One of the kids said to me, "Why is that homeless person's life more important than mine? I can't sleep in my house because I'm scared they're going to come in and put a knife to my throat like they told me on the street." And that's not nice for a young child at 7 years old to have to live that way. So these are things that, you know, when we have to respect that a lot of the people that are coming here, their children are hugely impacted by this, you know, hugely impacted. So they're seeing it from their child's perspective. Some of us are seeing it from the poor person that doesn't have a place to go for treatment or whatever. So we have to be really cognizant of the different viewpoints, and none of them are wrong. They're just different viewpoints, right? So we have to really think about that when we're looking at it. Like, we all look at it through a different lens. So I think this has been a really good, productive conversation. I know, Ruth, you had one more thing, and I'm hoping we can bring it back on track.
Thank you. One thing that I was thinking about in terms of this committee being more relevant and being able to get sort of engagement and topics is there was something that was spoken about at the last meeting in June. And it was when you advised, the chair advised, that in accordance with council procedure bylaw 2018 number 7272, question period will no longer take place at public safety committee meetings, and that any members of the public in attendance, you know, can speak to you after. But we have people here in the audience right now, and they can't ask questions. They can't engage with this committee. Unless they do so in advance and ask to speak as a delegation. Not a lot of people, I mean, clearly nobody at this table has this problem. Some people are quite introverted. They don't want to go and be put on the hot seat for 5 minutes and behind a podium, but they might have a question. I don't know how we
So do you want to make a recommendation to put question period back, and it can go, Ms. Gurry?
So thank you, Chair. There was quite a bit of discussion about this matter when that amendment was brought forward, before it came forward, and afterwards from members of council, and being at committee meetings where questions were directed to staff, which is not the intention of question period. So a lot of folks were coming to this meeting and other committee meetings and directing their questions to staff. And the intention originally behind question period was for the media to come and question decisions that were made by council. That's where question period came in. And it was kind of just adopted as part of a committee agenda because it followed the procedure bylaw. However, even if folks from the public have questions for the committee are at-large members aside from the chairs, and the chair and the co-chair. So to have them put on the spot to answer questions that they might not have the answers to, it then reverts to staff again. So that was the rationale behind, aside from committee of the whole of council, which would be finance and audit and GPC, to eliminate question period from advisory committees.
Sorry, Councillor Eastmer? No, sorry.
I mean, I just would, I hear what is being said, but I'm curious if there's a way to have engagement, I mean, without these problems around.
Yeah, and I think, like, you say engagement, like, I think that became part of the issue with question period, was that the actual desire from members of the public was to have a bit of a debate, or for them to make more of a statement than actually ask a question. And that's where it became problematic, because this is a selected committee to advise council, and we're trying to have like a discussion amongst the committee. And certainly if the member of the public has a question for one of the chairs, like, we're happy to follow up with them, but it's just not the, like, question period isn't the venue to do that. But if they're certainly welcome to sign up as a delegation at the committee level for any of the items on our regular agenda.
And Ms. Gurry, would it not be fair to say that once a consent item, or the minutes go to council and they've been accepted by council, that there's nothing prohibiting somebody coming to the council meeting and asking a question there of council?
Yeah, question period has changed at council meetings as well to be limited to consent items, reports, and other business items. So if any of these items are on consent, anybody can come to a council meeting and ask a question there. And then council representatives, all of you can have the opportunity to answer that.
I think, like what Ms. Gurry's trying to say, it's up to council to be doing the answers. It's not up to committee members. So, and that's consistent across all of our committees, unless, like as Ms. Gurry said, it's not, unless it's a full board of council. So that's one of the rationales. And thanks for reminding me that there was a great conversation and I don't think we would be changing that for those reasons. And yeah.
Yeah, but again, to the engagement piece, I do think we need to create better transparency at the committee level around the availability for the public to come as a delegation to a committee meeting to speak on a specific committee agenda item. Because, for example, when I was inviting people to come as a delegation to the Lost Lake Road thing, on the delegation form on the city's website, there's no way to actually select the Public Safety Committee. And so they had to put that in the special comments. And so it's not obvious, and I understand that might be a holdover from a previous way that we did things, but you can come as a delegation to a committee on a committee item, and then you can also come to any council meeting and present as a 5-minute delegation at the beginning of the meeting on literally anything you want. And we do get literally any kind of topic, and you get 5 minutes.
Within our jurisdiction.
Yeah, sure. But there's so many things within our jurisdiction.
Yeah, you can word it in there.
It can be pretty
Ms.
broad.
Gurry?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Councillor Eastmere. And the reason there's no selecting of the committee is because in the procedure bylaw, it says that the corporate officer determines what, and so they can just put in there, but I think we might need to put a different committee delegation. If it's an item on the agenda, like you clearly stated, they can come as a delegation to any
even a
agenda
little
item. Yeah.
Yeah, little explainer or something like that,
Yeah,
just to simplify that process.
Doug, did I get to you yet?
Sorry?
Did I get to you yet for both your concerns or anything, or is this good? Okay, thanks. Colin, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so, I mean, I'm assuming that some of the comments about not feeling safe in these conversations are about some of the things that I have said. I don't really have anything further to say to that other than just, when I come to this meeting, I'm coming to this meeting discussing serious topics with people that are also very passionate and understand these issues as well. And I certainly understand the complexity of all these issues. That's not why I say some of the things I do. Is not, the intention is certainly not to disrespect people. It's really what it is I'm trying to see this committee actually be functional and to achieve its mandate. Hillary, you had said that this committee was set up in order to advise council, and that's what I want to do. I want to advise council, but if we're not being sought, if our input's not being sought, we're left to just dream up ideas or things that are affecting us directly or our community members directly to ask for those things to be raised or added to agendas, and that's not always consistently happening. And so we're just again, I think that this committee, with the people that have been selected, irrespective of political leaning or position on these topics, all have very valid things to bring to the table. And so I want I think that for us to be effective as a committee is to be able to wrestle with these difficult topics and to discuss them, and so that the council can see that there is this dialogue happening. I worry that that council as a whole, and perhaps even city staff, it does feel to me, and maybe this is unfounded, but I don't read minds, that organizationally, it is pick and choose. It is being very selective as to what we actually are asked to weigh in on. And perhaps because if there were some topics that we were asked to weigh in on, some members of council wouldn't like what they heard.
I'm going to stop Colin right there. That's not the case at all. I think part of the problem is, and I think Councillor Ishmael and I both said that we need to get our council to start referring more things back to us. Our staff works very hard to try and bring us stuff to the table. We have to remember, Miss Wood is juggling so many things, and then she takes the time to come to these meetings, and she doesn't always have time to find search items for us, right? It's up to us to give her those items and ask her to work on them, or same thing as Mr. LeBerge or our fire chief, our police. We have our 2 top police officers here. Like, it's up to us to try and get them the work, and that's where, like, if we look at our work plan, and we'll go back, I'll have further conversations with myself, Ms. Gurry, and Councillor Eastmears, how can we improve getting topics to this table, work with our council members, and maybe look at something like, we've come up with one today, the standing item on the hub. That's one we can look at. There might be some other stuff we can come up with that are standing stuff, like if you're looking at what are our crime stats, like, you know, I can work with the RCMP because we do get something, if it's something you guys are interested in, and they're able to release it to us, I can ask them, can you release how are our sexual assaults? What are our you know, B&Es and stuff, like, you know, there's, because I heard today about, you know, the skate shop losing all their stuff, and, you know, so I know those are things that are important, so I can work further with our RCMP partners, our fire chief and stuff, to try and bring back more meaningful stuff. And, you know, this is our I guess this is our second year that we're sort of been in stuff, and the first is learning, right? The governance, as we talked about. So we can work to make this better, and we will work to make it better. I'm just cognizant of the time that people do have to leave. Is there's something further, Colin? And I appreciate your comments.
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else? Ruth?
Yeah, so and I'm sorry it's embarrassing to ask this. I've been on lots of committees, but I've never been on a committee where there aren't action items just automatically brought to the next meeting. And all of this, like, referring back, and then 2 months later, maybe you get to talk, like, it's just very different than anything I've been a part of, and it slows the timeline down considerably, especially when meetings are every 2 months, so you can have 6 months go by like that. But if I was to, like, am I allowed to speak to something that was at a council meeting that I was flagged as a concern? Like, no?
Well, what you can do is, if you have something that you flagged as a concern, send it to legislators and myself. I will work with Ms. Gurry to see how we can get it brought to the table. If we can get it brought to the table, or it may be something where Ms. Gurry may say, you know, Councillor Armstrong, you need to go back to council to say, this has been flagged by members of the Public Safety Committee. Could we please refer it? Like, there's ways we can work around it, I think. And like I said, I'll work with Ms. Gurry and Ms. Bhopal Singh to see how can we do it better. Like, I mean, you did get a hold of me with these 2 topics. That's why they're on there. I asked for them to be on. So there's ways that we can do it. But I think, as we've heard, we need to come up with a list of standing topics you guys want to see at the table. We've come up with the hub. And if you think of other things, please email us and we can look at it so that we can present it for the next meeting. To say, here's topics that have been presented, and then I'll ask you to speak to why you think it's an important topic, and then we will vote on it. You know, I know something that has come up is the lack of shelter space, and if that's something somebody wants to talk about, we can look at it, right, Scott?
I do agree with Judge Cowling, though. I don't think there's like a nefarious plan in council not to bring some items to this committee.
We forget.
But it would be nice if they did.
I'll be quite honest, we sometimes forget.
I appreciate that their expertise can bring us the items that we need to be talking about.
Because I'll sometimes say to Hillary.
And I like that we also have a method that we can get things on the agenda, but it just has to go to council first, get approved, then come back to us.
Yeah, unless it's in your work plan.
Unless it's in our work plan. So now I'm understanding sort of the governance routes there. So
yeah, and I appreciate Ms. Gurry and Ms. Bhopal Singh for clarifying that, because I get confused too, because there's so many different things. Okay, any other conversation? Seeing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Scott, seconded by Kim, all in favor? Thank you all for your time, and we will get this worked out.